Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now, for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only, Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls. Tonight, we are doing a supernatural health segment with a terrific guest. This is going to be a blockbuster show. So get your coffee, your tea, your wine, whatever, and get ready to hear some incredible information from our guest, Markus Klotz, who we'll be introducing in just a couple minutes. So anyways, everybody, glad you're here for this. PK, how are you doing?
I'm absolutely fantastic.
Oh, good.
Fingernails hurt, but I'm hanging in there.
Good for you. Good.
Retrograde is still in effect until the 7th of April.
Oh,
Don't forget that. In fact, think about what we just went on with the government, where the editor-in-chief, the information that was passed out over the Atlantic, that nobody knows how it happened.
yeah.
So things are crazy. But it will be over the 7th of April. Thank God.
Yes, I'm ready.
It's
I'm ready
been
for
absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
But we're in it 4 months. And the 4 month is all about a very honest vibration. It deals with health, healing. Stroke couldn't be better tonight to go with all of this.
That's right.
And it's really a good time to get things done. Details are about improving your mentality and your health and getting things put together. It's look into your finances because it is tax time. And we're going to find some little loopholes here and there. Hopefully we can fill them instead of being taken down with them. But everything's going to be a bit chaotic with what's going on. But get organized this month. That's really what it's all about. But most importantly, everything that we experience is going to deal with health and details. So double check everything. If you don't, let's face it, there's going to be some places where you sit that are going to hurt because you're going to get it there. Okay.
Wow. Okay. All right. We've got our marching orders. We know what to do.
Oh, that is for sure. Learn whatever you need to make life and your health better, because that's really what this month represents. That in our finances. Details, work them up and get them going.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, I'm ready. I've got all my notes here, so I'm ready to go.
Good
and
girl.
I'm so excited, as I know you are too, because you and I have discussed many times how the American healthcare system is failing people with chronic disease. Yeah. You and I both know this. Totally. So anyways, we have a terrific guest tonight, Markus Klotz. He is from Germany and he has a clinic. He's a co-founder of a clinic. And this clinic is the Apheresis Center. It is in beautiful Cyprus. I wish we were there right now with our guests.
So do I. My gosh.
Gorgeous there. And they have a beautiful clinic. They're getting incredible results. They have an understanding of chronic disease like no one else. And so I'm not going to jibber jabber on much more about our guest. I'm just going to bring him on here live so he can tell us everything we need to know. So Markus, welcome to the show.
Welcome. I'm starting to blush a little bit. All the things you just said. And I saw the intro with the aliens and all these fantastic things in the stars. And I was like, oh my God, how is my dry data as a scientist? Because everything we do is so incredibly big data and dry data and just binary and data driven, right? So I was like, oh, and she tells that I'm going to be very entertaining. I was just thinking like, I'm probably not exactly the most entertaining person. Everything is so data-based.
No, that's not true. You sell yourself short. And here's the thing, with our show, we've been doing leading edge health presentations for years, and yours is the first one that we're doing this year. And it is so important to have you here. This is a critical subject, and what you and your scientists and doctors have done is truly remarkable. But let's start with you first, because something happened to you. You were affected, as PK and I have been in the past by other things, but you were affected. And so what changed your trajectory and brought you into the healthcare field?
So, here in Europe, I was working in Switzerland, Liechtenstein, London in the financial industry, mobile payments, all of that things. And I loved what I did and wouldn't need to change anything. And suddenly, out of the blue, I got struck by COVID the first time. And unfortunately, my family members, they had a very different experience than I did. They all recovered. Good for them. I ended up in a wheelchair. So after 8 weeks of having not recovered, I was bedridden 23 hours a day, right? And it was at a point where I couldn't even hold a glass of water anymore, or I had to slide to the toilet on a pillow. Not an exactly nice experience. And we had a 6-month-old. She's now 4.5 at that time. And well, since we got a second healthy child, which is a miracle, the boy is 1 year now. And I was just like not being able to work, not being able to do anything. So 3 weeks, my wife took care of me, 3 weeks, my mother, because I needed a full-time caregiver, right? And I did not know where to turn to, because no matter where I turned to, and it was like 20 doctors, most of them private at the end, because the public system in Europe also could not help me. And when I was there, they said, hey, it's just in your mind. Don't worry. Take an aspirin, sit on the couch, you'll be fine. And I was like, guys, I am somebody who works 18 hours. I know how my body works. I know how my heart was beating. I was actually a professional athlete, just like my wife. And so it's nice what you're saying here, but this does not actually fit together. Nothing of what you say makes sense. I never had all of these symptoms. I never had a lack of muscle power to stand on my own legs. I never had bursting fingertips. I never had a long list of, almost 50 symptoms, right? Which I, by the way, don't remember anymore, because I'm just living off my notes and the memories of my family. That time, I have very little memory, right? So I see pictures, I know they're real, but I don't remember when they were taken or why whatsoever, right? So long story short, eventually I was like coming to a point where I had like 2-3 hours where I didn't have this brain fog, because I had very intense brain fog. And I used that, and I built my own little laboratory, and I went on the preprint servers. I started my own research. And so I found antivirals. I found blood thinners. I found intravenous treatments with zinc, which the myocarditis, for example, was treated successfully with. So slowly, I started going up the ladder from like probably 10% on the Bell scale up to 20, 30, 40 over the course of 4 or 5 months, right? And then I started working for a foundation called the Long COVID Foundation, because I wanted to drive science, because I knew if this happens to me, it's going to happen to a lot of other people, right? And at that time, long COVID was not well researched. I'm not saying it is now, but nobody knew anything back then. My own uncle is a doctor, and at least he was honest. He said, Markus, I can't help you with this. We don't know anything about this. And I was like, so the answer is lying in a bed and just waiting till I die? That's not going to cut it for me, right? I have a 6-month-old, and she's going to grow up without a father. That's not how this was planned, right? I was 40 at the time. And then slowly, I got myself up the ladder. And then one of the people that I worked with in the Long COVID Foundation, it was an honorary position, and we were all volunteers. And suddenly I got a call, and she went, Markus, have you heard this interview of Dr. Jaeger? I was like, Dr. Jaeger? Doesn't ring a bell. He said, no, there was this really cheeky woman going online, and she called into a science show and said, I wouldn't be as cheeky as I have to, but I really want to tell you we found something that works against long COVID. And obviously the journalist was somebody who knew her from before, and so they had a discussion. And I listened to it, and I was like, this sounds really good, because maybe this is going to help me to reclaim my 60% that were still missing. Because it's 40%, I still had muscle pain, joint pain. I couldn't eat almost. I was down to 10 foods that I could eat, whatever. So it was not a really good life quality. I was trapped in a body that was completely dysfunctional, right? Wow. And it got worse. So, yeah. And then I found Dr. Jaeger, Dr. Beate Jaeger. I flew to Germany. She treated me with a treatment called H.E.L.P. apheresis. And the treatment is actually, H.E.L.P. apheresis is short an abbreviation for heparin-induced extracorporeal LDL fibrinogen precipitation apheresis. Don't try to memorize it.
No.
It is a bit complicated.
I like the acronym better. All right.
It's just incredible in what it does. It's a highly selective form of apheresis. Now, what is apheresis? Apheresis is a Greek word, and it basically means separation, right? So there is over 40 different forms of apheresis out there. Some people know apheresis because you donate platelets with apheresis, right? It extracts the platelets from your blood, or blood cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, whatsoever. And the apheresis that we use was originally designed to tackle people that had high cholesterol, where their blood vessels started to clog up, and then they started to have strokes. And it was developed into an apheresis form that not only was able to fix blood vessels, especially the ones in the small microcirculation area, but also to, up to a certain point, revive organs, which is incredible. Because if you look at the MRI scans of a heart that is functional at 30% after a stroke, and then within weeks, you can see how the heart goes back to 70%. And only the stroke area itself is left is functional. And that can be done by regularly modulating the plasma of your blood, right? I mean, you could call it layman's term blood wash, but then you would call dialysis PV wash, whatever. And that's not what it is, right? It's a very complicated, several step process. And the H.E.L.P apheresis is able to revive organs up to a certain time, make blood vessels functional again. And that's not the only thing. It helps us to remove spike protein, bacterial fragments, chemokines, cytokines. The list is incredibly long. So it's quite sophisticated as treatment. And that was only the start of what we're doing.
Yeah. So this is one of the treatments that you offer at your clinic. And you have people from all over the world going to the Apheresis Center. So it's really exciting to see this grow and people becoming aware of this kind of treatment. That's it's pretty non-invasive. I mean, you do have the intravenous experience, but it's not surgery. It's something that you can tolerate. And so for you to get better, how many treatments did you have to have?
Yeah, so I started, actually my mom had long COVID a year after me, right? Which was interesting. Then we already knew exactly what to do. We fixed her within 3 months. And she's the only patient I've ever seen that's now 110%. Because also her Hashimoto's, the thyroid, we got completely rid of it.
Really?
Yes, really. And my father called me and said, Markus, you did one treatment too many. She starts to be a pain in the, again. I said, hey, we don't give warranties if that happens. We fix them, right? So it was a little joke in the family. Yeah. No, she's doing so incredibly good now. So
that's fantastic.
She got 4 treatments.
Four
and
treatments.
I got 4 plus 3 later on. Yeah.
Okay. May I ask you a question about another health issue that's pretty big here, and I know PK has been struggling with it for years, is osteoporosis. Does this have any effect on that?
I would need to discuss this with the medical team because they're combining different treatments. So whenever there is inflammation involved, right? Whenever there is blood flow in the microcirculation issue involved, then we have quite good cards, right? Whenever there is other things like blood cells involved, not so much. That's also why we don't use these treatments for cancer. We do and we don't. So people who have cancer and they have other co-illnesses, to fix the rest, to make them able to be focused and just battle the cancer, is perfectly fine. But this treatment wouldn't work as a cancer treatment, for example, right?
Right. So this may work as a combination, and that's what you do with a lot of people is you give them a combination of treatments with the H.E.L.P apheresis and other
multimodal combination therapy. Sorry to cross you there, but the term multimodal combination therapy is basically what we design the whole therapy around, and the elements of that portfolio they are all German cutting edge high tech, and it's amazing. I mean, in Medcare, if you've worked with someone who's worked in Medcare, I'm quite sure you agree. You treat somebody and then that person leaves your life. You don't really usually understand how they're developing. They come to a clinic, to a hospital, whatever. You give them some form of treatment. If it doesn't work, they come back and complain, hey, this pill didn't work, whatever, right? But we are very privileged right in front of our eyes, because people stay 3 to 8 weeks in average, right? And you can see they come in, and the symptoms of long COVID and post-vac, they're very invisible sometimes, but they're also very cruel. You can have 30, 40, 60 minutes a day where you look very normal, but then you horribly crash. And when you see that the first time, how a person can't talk anymore, can't walk anymore, that just was talking an hour ago normally, that's like, you don't believe it, right? But that's the invisible part. And we see these people coming in, and that the smile's gone. And of course, you're chronically ill. You're in constant joint pain, muscle pain. You're out of breath. It feels like an elephant is on your chest. There's 300 kilograms on your shoulders. You're severely depressed. You're having, I call it overall anxiety, because I had that too for the first time in my life when I got COVID. I was never an anxious person ever. And suddenly, boom, biochemically driven. Yeah, it was crazy. Just the door opening, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening? Or a car engine starting. With the treatment, it all went away, thanks God. And we see that with people too. But these people, we see them getting better in front of our eyes. So every week, the ones that are early responders, there's different groups, 2-3 groups. One respond within 2, 3, 4 months. Some respond within several weeks. Some, like me and my mom, we responded from the first treatment. It was brilliant. We were sitting on the machine. I remember it from my mom. I don't remember my first treatment that much. She was sitting there, and there was a machine on the other side, and she was like, Markus, I can read the display of that machine. I don't remember ever being able reading something that's further away than a meter. What's happening, right? And of course, it actually affects the eyeball, the blood circulation. So these glasses, I got them from COVID. But every time after an apheresis treatment, I don't need them for a month. It's quite crazy, right? Because it does actually work very well. And then also she said at the same time when she was connected to the machine, I can breathe normally again. For the first time, I can breathe normally again, right? And then it just started going up and up and up. Yeah.
So everybody gets their life back, which is so exciting.
Not everybody, I wish. So I'm a data-driven person, and we record all the data. So currently, this year, for example, August last year, we had like the best months ever. Out of 25 patients, 24 had significant improvement, meaning they got a big part of their whole old life back, right? That's something that was unheard of. And that's why we haven't really published those data, because I want to kind of make sure that I do it in a very scientific way, because if numbers are too good to be true, they should be attacked, because anybody could just come along and go like, hey, this is 100% thing. That's not how medicine works, unfortunately. I would say it's very safe to say, after all the studies that colleagues and we have published, that we have a success rate of over 80%, meaning significant improvement. That's safe to say, I think, with the data that we have.
Those are some really great stats. Yeah, that's excellent.
For medicine, in medicine, the moment a treatment works for more than a third of people, it's applicable. Then it's worth doing it, right? So 80% really is very good. Yes.
Yeah, it's excellent. It is. Talk to us, if you would, about microclots, or what you referred to as nanothrombi. Tell us, what is that?
So if you take blood into a little vial and you put it on the shelf, right? Then you can separate it into big blood parts. They will just fall down on the bottom, and the plasma on top, the yellowish liquid. Many people have seen it when they put like a little vial of blood in a doctor's office or wherever for testing. Interestingly enough, the big blood parts, they fall down very quickly. And if you directly after take the plasma part and you put it in a separate vial, 15, 20, 30 minutes later, you see another 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters, depending on the person, of particles on the bottom. And until 5, 6 years ago, that was not a thing. So I think it was an Italian scientist who discovered it the first time. And he was like, what are these things down there? And by now, we know much more what it is. It's fibrin aggregates. It's basically from the coagulation cascade. So when blood coagulates, these are small little fibrin networks. And you know the coagulation, fibrin, fibrinogen, it's like activated, deactivated. And they can build with These aggregates can build with white blood cells, with red blood cells, with blood platelets, just the fibrin. But they all have one thing in common. They're very, very small, actually. So the average particle size is 5 to 45 nanometers, right? And unfortunately, they're predominantly built with amyloid proteins. That's what we've seen in research. What does that mean? Unfortunately, the body can no longer dissolve them naturally. Even if we put them in something like stomach acid, for example, we would need 3 rounds to dissolve these little things, right?
Wow.
Now you would say, but Markus, what's the problem? They're only 5 to 45 nanometers. Let it be, right? That's very small. Who cares? Well, problem is you have 2 to 80 billion of those in your bloodstream, and they have a habit of sticking together. Now, what they do, and we don't only see this in long COVID, we see this in Lyme, Epstein-Barr, we see this in ME/CFS, 80% of the ME/CFS people actually. And they have a habit of sticking together, and they will go well through the big blood vessels, but they will get stuck in the very small blood vessels, which we call the microcirculation area. What does that do? Not a lot of good things, actually nothing good at all. No oxygen supply, no nutrition supply on cellular level. Once a blood vessel gets clogged up, inflammation starts. So you have a systemic inflammation of your whole body that gives you symptoms. Not very nice. And as if that wouldn't be enough, unfortunately, that seems to, we're not 100% sure, that's where we're still researching. It seems to trigger downstream autoimmunity symptoms. Autoantibodies are produced. Predominantly not the kind of autoantibodies that will attack your own body, but the ones that stop processes, organic processes running smoothly. Specifically ATP and all these other processes, they are interfered, where the mitochondria is involved, etc. So that's where the fatigue and the post-exertion malaise might come into play. That so many of these people actually,
you and I previously discussed scleroderma, which I've had for many years, and that also is a disease with microclots or nanothrombi that does inhibit extremities, circulation in the extremities, but also eventually moves into the organ systems and does the same damage, which it becomes more deadly. So it moves into the kidneys or the lungs. And
it's been treated with plasmapheresis since decades, but of course, we've discussed this in the US. You mainly have therapeutic plasma exchange, TPE. That's a very basic treatment. That's basically like, if you want to compare it like a bicycle, and then you have very sophisticated forms of apheresis. In the same class as therapeutic plasma exchange, there is probably Ibu ozone treatments. And then you have very sophisticated apheresis forms like H.E.L.P apheresis or inospheresis. And they're not like a bike anymore, they're more like a race car. So it's like a very unfair comparison. You can't even really compare them. They're very different things. They're made for very different indications, actually. Yeah.
Right. You're at the top of the line with everything you're doing.
Right.
And you know, one of the things that I found very interesting is I have a friend who has scleroderma also, Ed Harris. He became a medical researcher and then determined exactly what you were talking about with a microclot problem and went in for the TPE therapy, which was an off-label type of therapy at the time. And he did get results. God bless him. He was able to stop his symptoms and reverse some of them, but he has to continue to go for treatment. And I think he's now got it down to a science of when people start out, they have to go twice a week, then they go once a week, then they go eventually once a month. But the thing that was so upsetting to me is that there was no researcher that would take this seriously and pursue a course of research for other scleroderma patients. And here you're not only helping people like me, but you're helping long COVID patients, like you said, MS, and also some of these other diseases, probably a lot more than we can spend time naming tonight, that are affected. And maybe this is at the source of a lot of them too. So it's incredible what you're offering. I hope our audience understands how important this is, what you're offering.
I hope so.
Yeah, because this is the model. This is the way to go for chronic illness. From everything I've seen.
It's quite interesting how this all happened because nothing of this was planned, you know? So my own story, Dr. Jaeger's story, interlink, and then we started researching, and then other people joined in. And a lot of the illnesses that we discovered this works for, people just came and called and said, hey, do I have the right to try? And, we have this one principle, do no harm. Every treatment we do at the center needs to fulfill the do no harm principle. And we say, yes, everybody has the right to try, but we also clearly told them we only have data on long COVID so far, on post-vac, and on ME/CFS. So if somebody came along and said, hey, I have Lyme, now we have data on Lyme. Brilliant, by the way. Reactivated Lyme combined with long COVID, oh my God, the apheresis plus the hypothermia, that's like literally 40% of the patients of the last 6 months came in with reactivated illnesses that were reactivated through the pandemic, through the spike protein, right? So
Okay.
there was a lot of people that called in and said, can I try? Because this is the problem that I have. And we were like, we don't have any data, so we don't know if this is going to benefit you. And most of them were like, hey, at least you're honest. I want to try. And we were like, fair enough. It's minimal invasive. It doesn't have a lot of side effects, if any. Of course, the blood pressure can go slightly up or down temporarily. Blood sugar can drop temporarily. All of these things are very easy to adjust by the medical team. And then they tried, and for a lot of them, sometimes even to our surprise, they saw results, right? Now, of course, we have to be careful because it's early on. There is things like positive bias. There's confirmation bias. You go overseas for a treatment, you want it to work, right? One of the reasons I never take my own data and I never structure my own data, and why I always have other people dealing with my own data, because I am absolutely positive biased. I know that. You come in through the door of my clinic, I want you to be better within 2-3 weeks. So of course, I'm always the same idiot coming asking, how are you doing? and I expect and I wish and I hope that I get a positive feedback, but that is classic positive bias. Because really and truly, what you should do is you should go like, nice that you're here. Here's a survey. But it's so hard because every time I see somebody in the apheresis chair, it's my own story, and I've been sitting in that chair just 4 years ago. Yeah. So every case is personal. I'm not sure if this is a good therapy form, though. So,
But again, it's interesting as you go forward and you have many guests that come to try this out. They're very anxious to have this positive experience, and many of them do. So if not most. And again, this is very groundbreaking, very exciting. And I know, as you mentioned, there's the EBU treatment here in the US, and there is hospital apheresis, which, as you described it, is kind of medieval, but but it is at least addressing it on the issue of blood needs to be washed. I'm going to speak like a layperson because I am, and these things need to be cleaned out of the blood, and especially these microclots or nanothrombi. They do not belong there. And as you mentioned, how do you get rid of them? This is how, because we were discussing the use of enzymes, nattokinase, lumbrokinase. But then you said to me, but then how do you get rid of this debris that's running around in your
It's a bit of a problem. So in the beginning, we didn't have another option. Right now, we're still using these so-called fibrinolytics. So these pathways to break down clots, or actually it's thrombi, because clots, it's outside of the body, right? This is where, unfortunately, the last years have brought a lot of good science, and unfortunately, a lot of not that good science in pandemic times. It was a boost of publications. Not all of them were that good. One example, nanothrombi is the correct terminology. There's nothing micro about something that's 5 to 45 nanometers, and there's definitely nothing. A clot is happening outside of the human body when it's clotting. Inside, it's building a thrombi, right? So a thrombus. Now, if you don't even get the terminology right, it's a bit difficult. And then the rest of the science also lag a little bit behind. So I'm hoping for more good science to surface in the very near future, because that's going to help to bring this into mainstream medicine. Because don't forget, actually what happened is just history repeating. 30 years ago, middle of the 80s, we had HIV, an epidemic, right? And they didn't get help for 20, 30 years. So this is just history repeating with a different virus. Thanks God, it's not killing people as quickly, but it does kill very slowly and consistently from what we've seen, right? So, yeah.
Now, what about testing for these nanothrombi? You and I discussed that briefly before, but right now there's only one test that I'm aware of that anybody is taking seriously.
There's two now. So the one that you're speaking about is the confocal fluorescent microscope. I spoke to the company Zeiss back in the earliest days when the South African team and the German team did a study week in Germany, because we didn't manage to get one of those. They were so hard to find. Every university couldn't borrow us one. The specialized companies who borrow these out, they were all out in the market, and we couldn't get one of these, and we had these research projects going on. So I really called up at the customer line, the normal size customer line, and I just told the lady my story, and I said, listen, I was in a wheelchair, I can walk now. Is there any way where you can help us? And she was like, oh, you're calling at the very completely wrong place. But you know what? As it happens, I know somebody who could help you. I'm going to make him call you on Monday. That person then called me and said, hey, not only do we have a microscope for you, we're going to bring it, build it up, and you can have it for several weeks and just do the research. You know, they were fantastic. They were absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Fantastic.
The second one is flow cytometry. So that's a very different form. The thing with the microscope is that you need to stain it with thioflavine. And there's been quite a bit of discussion if we're not staining other particles, but turns out we don't. But it's not exactly a validated test yet. None of these tests are validated in the form that this has been reproduced over and over. More and more now, let's say 3, 4, 5 different areas, South Africa, America, Cyprus, Germany. So we're working on it. And everything new, you always have to be careful, because, you know, it's very easy to produce bad science very quickly, you know. Mm-hmm. So that would actually harm the whole progress in this field. But as you just mentioned, these nanothrombi, they seem to be a huge problem in many chronic illnesses, right? And to test it, we actually... So what are the markers that we found, the biomarkers that we found very, very good so far? So the nanothrombi, or the microclots, as some still call them, they're an okay marker. It's not a bad thing, but to be honest, right now, 4 or 5 years after the pandemic started, it's almost impossible to find blood where there's no nanothrombi inside. Well,
really?
Yeah, really. It's just, they're basically in every sample now. It's like literally impossible to find samples, only old samples where we don't have any nanothrombi in, right? So yes, they're so minimal, it's neglectable, but they're there, right? So
why are they there in so many people, even people that don't have long COVID or an autoimmune disease?
Well, don't forget, I think almost everybody got infected once by now with COVID, right? Or got the vaccine. And the spike protein, it doesn't seem to matter where it comes from. Spike protein is incredibly pathogenic, much more than we thought. And that causes a problem. Which brings me back to the one question we didn't answer, the fibrinolytics, you know, breaking down the spike protein.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, they take nattokinase, serrapeptase, bromelain, and so on and so on. We've actually stopped that, because it turns out when you break up the spike protein, the pieces that you break it up into, they are most likely actually more pathogenic than the whole spike protein.
Oh my God.
So we're using a method to extract the whole spike protein in its whole entirety. So that's also on a nutraceutical basis, by the way. So, and I'm not an esoteric person. I'm not a holistic person. I need data. Any treatment in our clinic, I need data. I need to try it hands-on. I need to see how it works.
Yes.
What we don't understand, for every treatment that we have, we tried 3 others that didn't work, right? But this natural product that we're using, the nutraceuticals that we're using, they're called Medicinals 9 in the US. They are delivering the tests. They have done the animal studies. They've done the studies. We've just published a paper with Professor Manan Baig and with Dr. Philipp Machberg from Basel, Joachim Gerlach, brilliant researchers, all of them. And we could show that we can, with apheresis and artificial fever therapy, hypothermia, and this natural product, the nutraceuticals, it's a combination of 6 different products actually. We can reduce the spike protein persistence in exosomes and in immune cells, PBMC, by 90% within 8 weeks, which is unheard of. It's just fantastic results.
That is terrific. So you do have a supplement. It is not based on enzyme therapy. It's something else. And would you repeat the name of it again? Because I'm sure people are going to want to know.
Medicinals 9. You can order it. It's a supplement that is actually highly effective. It's tailor-made, and the group who produces it, that we're working with very closely, they're just second to none, I must say. I mean, I haven't seen anyone working so hard on this. So they've brought this one out for long COVID and post-vac to extract the spike protein without breaking it up. And then they're also working on specific supplements now that will come to market for Epstein-Barr, Lyme, and others. That's what they're working on. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that fibrinolytics are bad. There's one from Italy that's called NAC augmented. Highly recommend it at the end of the treatment when there's so little spike in your body that the amounts are quite not neglectable, but they're so low that breaking up the rest of it that you didn't catch makes sense, right? So we're having this two-step model. First,
that's
the vegetables, then the NAC augmented, and it just works. But I'm going to be honest with you, the natural products they're very good. They're a very good piece of the puzzle in the multimodal combination therapy. But the physical treatments, like different forms of apheresis, H.E.L.P apheresis for protein-based pathogens, immunopheresis for autoantibodies and environmental toxins and pathogens, immunoabsorption for autoantibodies, and then another high-tech treatment, the H.E.L.P hypothermia, the artificial fever therapy, where you have water-filtered cuvettes of infrared, ultrared radiation. That's just incredibly high-tech. Those are the ones that give us the best results, unfortunately. Now,
so when you say hyper, does that mean it's bringing people's bodies to a cold or a hot place? What is happening with this?
It's hot. Hypothermia.
Oh, it's hot. Okay.
Yeah. The other one is called cryotherapy, which we also use successfully for reducing pain. But I'm more a fan of the hypothermia simply because we seem to kind of unwind the spiral part of the spike protein, flatten it out, deactivating it, right? And we're also literally frying off the receptors, specifically adrenergic receptors, where autoantibodies dock on. And these autoantibodies, they're very nasty. They don't dock on like adrenaline or adrenaline for like 3 minutes. They dock on for 7 to 21 days, literally grilling you from the inside, which is why you're always in this fight or flight state, right? And then the last thing we do, we bring your immune system into the highest gear. So it's immunomodulating. Brilliant therapy. I did it for my chronic bronchitis when I'm not good with air conditions, and I was coughing all summer last year. And then I was so fed up, and I did one hypothermia, and literally within 8 days, gone.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my wife, she did it too. She's a professional swimmer. She's now retired, but she had a small nose throat infection, which you sometimes get when you swim. But she still had massive pain in the hips from giving birth to our son, right? And both resolved with hypothermia. You could very nice. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's very affordable. We're speaking about $300-400 a session here, right? So this is also something that people don't understand. As a research and patient-driven clinic, we're trying to optimize the patient's budget. We prefer to have 200 patients that all have a smaller budget than to have 100 that spend a lot of money. Why is that? Because that way we can treat more patients. And we figured out we can reduce the number of the expensive treatments. Apheresis, they're in the range of 1,600 to 2,500 euros of treatment, and you need 4 to 6 of those, right? We can reduce those sometimes by adding hypothermia, nutraceuticals, etc. So we're really trying to optimize the whole algorithms. That's what we're trying to do,
Oh, that's wonderful, because healthcare here has gotten extremely expensive, and it's nice to know that you're cost conscious. So when people go to your clinic, they're really going to get the help they need, and it's not going to bankrupt them.
That's important.
Yeah, it's so funny. Sometimes I get a call from the US, and they go like, "What's the price, Markus?" And I go like, "Well, we only know the average price, and that's like $10,000 to $12,000." And they go like, "Per treatment?" And I go like, "No, for the whole 3 to 6 weeks." And they go like, "Oh." Because I know how expensive America is. And in Europe, we're not used to this. We're actually used to go to the doctor and not pay anything, right? We all have either state insurance or private insurance. And this is what people don't understand. Cyprus literally has the best private health sector of Europe. We have American clinics here for the price of Europeans. There's American private clinics around. one of the best cardiologists, if not the best cardiologist, is here in Cyprus. So the medical network in the private healthcare sector is just second to none here. And you have all of these direct flights to Cyprus, which is the reason we chose Cyprus, because, we were looking at Bulgaria, Czech Republic, and many countries. And at the end, we were like, no, Cyprus. English speaking, that's a must, right? So there is only Malta and Cyprus and the UK in Europe. So we were down to those three, right? And then Malta was a bit too small. The UK with the regulations, impossible to do cutting edge technology. So Cyprus it was.
Yeah. Now, do people stay at the clinic, or do they take residence at a hotel nearby? Where do they do?
So we have this. So life sometimes writes the best stories, right? You can't actually invent this story. You can't make it up. So on our blog, you will see a lot of people from the US, and one of them was, and I can freely talk about it because they published it with us. So there was a US teenager, severe ME/CFS. Like literally on Bell scale 10, we didn't know if he's going to make it another day. He could only eat 2-3 foods. He was more bones than anything else. And so when he arrived, we started treating him, and we got him up to, he gained 12, 15 kilos, up to 60% by now. And his mother is a professional travel agent. So
nice.
They moved to Cyprus. So I said, Diana, do you think you could combine the knowledge that you have from chronic illness from the last 9 years from your son with travel? Because then you could do travel support. And she said, yeah, that's the thing, actually. And she started doing that. So now we have a full support system, from cook to caregiver to transport to hotel to shared accommodation to own villa. Everything's taken care of, incredibly professional, and with all the knowledge that you can possibly have about chronic illness. So all that people need to do is call her up and say, hey, Diana, for me, it's only 5 stars. I want my own butler. I want my limousine. Fine. Or somebody else goes like, no, cheap as can be. Only the air conditioning needs to be clean, no mold. But I don't need any comfort, just a bed. So she just manages whatever you need, right?
That's fantastic. Wow. BK, you ready to book your reservation?
I'm already writing. That's for sure. My goodness.
And how's the food? The food must be incredible.
Oh my God. You just hit me on my weakest spot, darling. I'm a foodie. And when I arrived in Cyprus, I had 10 kilograms less than I have now. My wife is pretty chilled out. She goes like, whoa, more man for the same money. So,
that's adorable.
It's so good here. Everything is fresh, organic. People freak out regularly about it because, give you an example, I haven't been eating pork meat because, the quality in Europe is not so good.
Yeah.
Remember the old days when your grandmother used to put like pork into the oven and it was like bacon and it was like amazing? You don't have that anymore. Everything smells like ammoniac and whatsoever. You do have that here in Cyprus. They have a special breed here, and the pork meat is second to none. So once a month, I actually fall for it, and it's just the best pork chop you can ever get. It's actually just 5 minutes from here in a nice, in a village restaurant in the middle, the old yard in the old town, and it's just fantastic. Yeah.
It sounds wonderful. Now, is Cyprus considered one of the places in the blue zone where they talk about people living longer?
I don't know, but there's a lot of people that are getting really old here, and I think so. Why did I move to Cyprus? I moved to Cyprus way before I did the clinic. Yeah. It was actually the Brexit that was driving me out of the UK and the cold weather. I'm a kite surfer. And so I was there in my wetsuit and I was like, oh my God, I gotta change the place, And so I Googled King of the Air is what I wanted to Google, but I Googled King of the Kite. I was distracted, and that's the name of the local competition here in Cyprus. So like, that looks nice. There's this dude with his rastas painting his beach hut, kite surfing. Hey, well, I'll just fly down there, have a look, right? I came here, the guy was still there with a beer and still painting his house, literally. I'm not joking. and I sat down and he said, what are you doing here? And I was like, kite surfing. He said, cool, it's a good place for kite surfing. I said, so where do you rent houses? He was like, over there. We're like, cool. And that's literally how I ended up in Cyprus.
That's incredible. Wow. Well, you ended up in a place that sounds like heaven on earth. It really does.
My kids love it. My kids love it. So we're living on the beach because on an island, I think you should live on the beach. It's so beneficial, right? because you wake up in the morning and you just get into the water. And then the temperatures here are just great all through the year. We don't really have a strong winter. We do have snow. You can snowboard and ski here, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's the Troodos Mountains.
Wow.
So that's quite interesting. Then we have one of the best 10 diving places in the world. A big warship that you can dive down to. And there's so many things to do. I think Cyprus they're very fond here. All of my super friends always go like, yeah, Markus, come on. You love Cyprus. Just shut up, right? You're like, yeah, but I do love Cyprus because the food. They have all of these really great family values. Sunday is family day, and it's holy. Nothing else happens but family barbecue. And when they do barbecue, they come with a wheelbarrow full of meat. And you go like, whoa, who's coming? And they look at you and they go like, just the two of us. And you go like, they're eating insane amounts of food, and it's all great, and the family time, and I just love it. And my kids love it as well, and my wife loves it. And well, it's a great place, and it's quite interesting. A lot of our patients have moved to the island. Can you believe it? Australians, Americans.
Sounds fabulous.
They just loved it, and they just stayed.
Oh, it just sounds so beautiful, and so.
We have a pensioner scheme that started last week. Just read it today in the newspaper. So U.S. pensioners can retire in Cyprus. There's a double tax treaty, and you only pay 5% tax. And you have access to the perfect health system for free, basically. So I think we're going to see an influx of 10,000, 12,000 U.S. retirees per year now.
Would not surprise me.
Yeah. PK, are you packing yet?
I'm thinking about it. Trying to figure out where I left the suitcase.
Yeah, because I know we've talked a lot about relocating. It sounds like the perfect place for you, PK. And you used to live in Greece long ago, right?
I love the area.
Yeah.
It's very similar to Greece here, very similar, because Cyprus has two parts, the north and the south.
Whole persona of the area makes you feel good.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's got that ancient healing feel.
Why don't you just come over for a coffee? It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If you invite me, I'll come.
There you go.
This is an official invitation for both of you. The hospitality here is so easy. Everybody, so just the other day, I had a scientist sleeping in my kids' room. He was like, I forgot to book a bedroom. And I was like, guess.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, it really is phenomenal what you're doing. And I do want to make sure to bring up to everybody that you are planning on opening a clinic here in the U.S. at some point, possibly next year. So I want to make sure everybody's aware of that, because these clinics need to happen here in the U.S. It will take some investment funds to do that. So if you are listening and you are a serious investor, then please reach out to us, because we would like to support that happening.
Most definitely.
It's time. It's time to change our chronic health care so that it makes sense and it's effective. And this is the best. And believe me, PK will vouch for me. I'm known for my research. I search the world for the best. And I know that your clinic is it. Mm-hmm. There's nobody that has the understanding, not only personally for what you've been through and what your mother went through, but you have a depth of understanding as a scientist about what needs to be done, what the point of origin is for these diseases. You talk about the COVID virus, and there's other viruses, as you mentioned. Epstein-Barr is a big one that has connections, and there's talk about gut infections for scleroderma patients that start the whole thing off. So we need somebody like you and your team, that really has that.
I'm so incredibly proud of my team. They're learning at light speed. The scientific team in the lab, just like the medical team, we implement new protocols. We optimize the algorithms. We're now working on a project where we use biotrackers 24/7, and we're creating big data pools, and we're actually then sectioning them with AI. So we're actually producing one big study, but we're able to derive hundreds of small studies from one big study by AI. And we're now building a new laboratory just 3 minutes from the clinic. That's actually going to be, I hope, and I think so, the leading laboratory in this field worldwide. And Professor Dr. Banan Baik is one of our scientific advisors. Professor Dr. Beate Jaeger as well. There's so many incredibly genius people, you know. It's very humbling. In all of my work, I'm usually always the most stupid person in the room.
I find that hard to believe.
No, believe me, it is very humbling to work with next level geniuses. And the only thing I share with many of them is my OCD and my Asperger's, which is very handy because we can communicate kind of binary, right?
Yes.
Because we don't get lost in, hello, how are you? We just go like.
Terrific. Just terrific. How many doctors are on staff with you that assist with the people?
Currently 3. Yeah.
3. Okay, that's
so there's
great.
Dr. Imbar, there's Dr. Irina, and you know, we call our doctors with their first name, not with their family names.
Oh, nice.
Also very different, and they're not allowed to wear their doctor coats and their name tags. They can put them on the chair. That has a reason. Most of our patients, they have extreme anxiety, and their pulse rate goes up the moment they see a doctor because of bad experience in the past.
True.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
We've literally removed this element of distance, because when you come into a professional medical facility, you always have a professional distance, right? And there's a good reason for that. I agree to that. But wherever we could, we removed that. So you will come into the clinic, and Dr. Jaeger said something nice. I've designed the place of my dreams. As far as anybody could have a chronic illness clinic, it's something to dream of. But, you know, so I really made the clinic I wished I had when I was ill, right? Like in every single detail, right? Yes. And that's why it's a bit different. So you come into the lobby, and people are very positive, and all they discuss about is, which treatment did you do? How did it work? Which one worked better? And you come in and you go like, wow, there's people that get better. And then you see somebody walking out, and you see him a week later and he looks way better. And it's just being heard, being understood, not being gaslit. And just, my doctors have this very simple rule. They're not allowed to psychologize a single symptom. Never, ever, right? And so you come there, and for the first time, not only do people and doctors understand, but they ask questions. So you come in and you go like, I have fatigue. Our doctors will not go like, yeah, maybe you're just tired. No, they will go like, all right. Is the onset happening then? Is there anything that drives it? Is it combined with PM, post-exertion malaise? Have you had in your medical history, whatever? So people come there and they go like, wow, these people do know a bit of what I've been going through, right?
Yes.
Builds trust. You know,
makes a world of difference.
If someone decides that they need to be there, what do they have to go through to get in touch with your facility?
Just send an email, give us a call. We made everything very easy. We have free consultations. We have all the information on the website. And, you know,
that's easier than here.
Sorry?
That's easier than here.
Yeah, much. It is.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty full, so you always have to call a little bit in advance. I don't like sending people away, of course, but there is sometimes a waiting list depending on the season. I'm not very good at saying no. Currently, we're expanding.
I'm glad to hear that.
And
unfortunately, we have 1 minute to wrap. I want to make sure everybody knows what your website is.
Right.
So, Chanel, I don't know if you can blast that across the front of the screen. And Markus, if you could just tell us what the website is that people should go to.
So just go on apheresiscenter.eu. We're in Larnaca in Cyprus, and it's like pretty super easy to come here. You just hop in a plane, stop over in a hotel for a night, hop into the second plane, and you're here. So you will find there's lots of Americans over here. Actually, currently there's over a third of our patients from the US.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for staying up so late and talking to us about this wonderful adventure.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I really hope to see you over here soon.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so.
Well, I always keep telling people you can just come and have a coffee. You know, that's it.
We got to do the whole
thing. You.
All right, I'm getting yelled at by the producer. I have to bring it to an end. Unfortunately, Markus, our love to you. Mwah. Thank you for all you do.
Markus.
Bye, girls. Thank you so much.
Bye. We'll be back next week, everybody, with another great show. Until then, see you on the Blue Highway. Good night.
Good night.